Hello, guys. So this morning I went to a liquors distillators, a place where people make liquors, and one of my dad friends, he owned the place, and it's absolutely amazing. Looks like it is built from the ground up. He developed the place, developed his liquor taste, and then it become a side business. It become his real business now because he is retired, and it looks like it look professional. It's not like someone scammy business, and it looks amazing. Of the equipment there is nice. Of the equipment there is professional stuff. He has a boiler. He has every single thing. The distillators chambers. How do people make freaking liquors? Let's go and watch it. How people how to make whiskey. How to make whiskey. Right? If we watch this video, we will be able to know how people actually make liquors, because it looks interesting. I quite like coffee. I like the way how coffee is grown.
The distillery is now in the hands of Headley G. Wright, Mitchell's great-great-grandson, the fifth generation of the Mitchell family to own and manage Scrimba. Being based in Campbelltown, the once proclaimed whiskey capital of the world,
Oi.
It is no surprise that many of the methods established by our forefathers are still applied in the distillery today. We use traditional production methods and are involved in each and every step of the whiskey making process.
Guys, we take a 15 minutes to like prepare to be focused for the next 2 hours. So by watching how to make whiskey, it's pretty chill, pretty interesting. Like, we all drink something, we all drink whiskey, liquors, but we don't know how they are made, which is a shame. Right? We watch how they make liquors, how they make whiskey, this delicious drink.
Meaning our whiskey is the most handmade in Scotland.
What happened to my video quality? It looks like it's from the 1920 720 pixel. Pretty bad.
This is steep. This is basically we start step one. We fill this up with our barley, which comes from these shoots down here. 1, 2, 3.
Oi, shut up, music. I don't want you anymore. See, the problem with streaming now is it's making my Wi-Fi a lot slower than it used to be. It takes so much resource to actually stream, and sometimes some of my stream got broken up into 3 videos, because like at 1 or 2 hours it's automatically it's just like my Wi-Fi dropped, and my stream got kicked out, so it's separated into like 2 videos for 1 stream, something like that. I might have to upgrade the Wi-Fi system, but we will look at this, right? Take like 15-20 minutes relaxing, and then we will focus with our work. I'll work.
We fill it with different tonnage, steep the 9 ton for 12 hours in water, and then we'll drain it for 12 hours, and then we steep it again for 14 in water, and then we drain it for 4 hours.
Ây ơi ơi. Ok.
Vâng, cũng lại là Vinh đẹp dai thì các bạn biết rồi. Đôi khi sự thật thì chúng ta cần phải cho mọi người biết chứ không thể che giấu nó quá lâu. Ví này mình chọn đó là màu nâu nappa, nó khá hay và cực kỳ.
Okay, whatever.
And after that, once it's steeped, we then lay it on the floor. So this is the upstairs floor, so this is 9 ton, which is usually like, again 10 tons because of the heat and the water outside. We then lay it out evenly for an even germination. It depending on season, if it's warm, we like it quite thin, but not too thin. And then again, if it's winter cold, we then lay it out thicker. The winter we close all windows to keep the heat in. In the summer we open them all up to air it. And if it's the temperatures get too hot, we have fans
Temperature
as well.
got too hot.
That's all really work with. We work with the natural air.
Basically, it's just before 6 o'clock. We've got the barley here that's been soaking. We're laying this all out so we can eventually trick the barley into what we call germination.
What is a barley? Barley. Am I spelling it right? Probably not.
Already 5 minutes in, man, this house just doesn't seem to go away. So, go away.
Yeah, people put a lot of work into this to make good whiskey, good liquors. Look at that. This is actually amazing how
After 6
people
days,
can do
shove it
this.
all in the wheelbarrows or push it down our elevator. That then goes from here.
Such a blessing.
Guys, early in the morning, 5:30.
They actually spend time in the morning, like at 5:30. I would be asleep. But what is malting? Malting. Right, malting is basically steeping, germinating, and drying grain to cover it into malt. Mainly used for brewing whiskey making, but can also be used to make malt vinegars and malt. This is malt. What is this thingy? Guys, we are watching how to make whiskey. How to make whiskey. Barley. So barley is just like the, what is it called? This thingy. What is barley? Barley rice. This. It's barley. It's called barley. This is. Is beer use barley? Is beer use barley beer? Barley. Create beer. Barley was the main grain used in brewing beer, and for the most part, it still is. Many brewers use other grains along with barley to create the beer. Most of the beer sold in.
Buddy Dan over here is already getting to work and contributing all of the barley, malted barley, into in here, which is then getting pumped up onto a conveyor
Right, the difference in making whiskey, people here love rice wine, especially like there's a type of rice that people love to drink when the liquors is made from that type of rice. It's really specific rice. I don't remember the name, but it's people just drink that type of rice. It's really good. I'm assuming they lay it out to make it dry and then shove it into the, what is it called? A cart and then put into the machine and then stuff like that. Well, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of dedication. Kilning. Kiln.
Spread it evenly, malting it. It's not going to be dry on one side. It's not going to be wet or dry and damp halfway. We looked at where you guys are going to light the fire and the peat smoke. It goes all the way from the fire upstairs and up. And it's going in, and you can see it on this floor here. It's basically a grate. So that smoke will come through all this barley giving it that. And obviously, you guys are different. You're definitely different.
What if you could learn how to draw amazing character designs without watching another YouTube tutorial?
It's actually amazing.
I'm not gonna lie, guys. It's been since 6 o'clock, and I don't know. I think it's been a couple hours now, and all I've done is basically shovel. And that is day shift. That seems to be all you do, right? Start the fire. Yeah.
Wow, they actually use wood and coal.
You can see now that he's starting to mix the dry stuff. Obviously the dry stuff's catching everything on fire, and then the moist stuff kind of sits on top, creating that smoky, the more peatier, smokier flavors, especially
Looks like poop.
You could be doing this up to 48 hours, if not longer. Obviously every distillery has their own process in doing that. But essentially this is it. The more peat, the more smokier flavors that you want in your barley, you just do this for longer periods of time. We just opened up the kiln. You guys saw we lit it yesterday about 11. It was on for about 6 hours. You guys come in the morning, check in, make sure it's dry. You'll do samples all around the kiln. Yeah.
Wow.
This is the only technology that Scrimba uses. So I don't even know if we're allowed to show this.
Actually amazing. I believe that because it's fermented, so it's extremely dangerous since it could be moldy. That's why they have to use mask.
From this here, along this belt and down what's called the donkey.
Oh, donkey, mate. The donkey.
Once it comes from the kiln, yep, it goes into these bins, hold about approximately 20 tons.
20 tons.
Very sophisticated, by the way. Bin, full, empty. We've got to determine how fast we feed the mill. We don't want to
Exactly, this is the problem that I have. When you pour in something too quickly, and there's like a tiny hole at the end, it's tend to choke. Especially like as big as like I pour the last time I do this, it choke. Like I pour in fish, like fish food. My fish food. I'm assuming what do they call it? Fish food. I don't know. Like it's like this tiny balls, like basically it's vegetable and stuff like that. And so it pour into like a funnels, and then when it pour into there, at the end it's clog up. It's clog up at the end, and then it's such a mess. So this is exactly that. You don't want to pour it too quickly, or it's going to clog at the end of it. Simple stuff.
This is the continuation. The malt travels along here, drops down, puck up by buckets, and it's transferred right up to the very top.
Nice. This looks amazing.
Now the malt runs down there. There's small magnets in the bottom which will catch any bits of metal or anything, and it'll go straight into this thresher. We'll turn it, and any loose particles we call cumins will go that way.
Yeah.
Oh.
And any small stones will get caught in that and they'll come out. They'll drop in here, and when that gets to a certain weight, we call a coop, it will drop down and then it'll feed the rollers. And then it'll go through the rollers down, it'll come along in the grist form, straight back up, along and into the grist bin.
Yeah.
Sitting there for half an hour.
Okay.
Start bringing it through to the underbar.
Yep.
What comes from there into there is then known as warts. Very sweet. Sitting there once I get to the level, I'll start pumping it from here up through a power flow.
Wow.
This is how we measure our water.
Yeah. Talk to me about this. How long has this been in existence for? Years.
Since the place was in it, actually.
Really?
Almost.
Yeah.
Just the old way they used to do it.
Em muốn xây thương hiệu cá nhân á, mà em vừa mập vừa xấu này. Có cách nào không? Em nói kiểu gì vậy? Em không xem cái Facebook của anh ạ.
Okay, man. Whatever. Shut up. Right, so what we are going to do today is finish this video first, right? Cannot skip on.
We'll go into the wash bath.
Gotcha.
Once we regulate the temperature there in the wash bath, we'll then drop in the yeast.
Drop in the yeast. Yeah.
This is the last one way through.
So fermentation is like at the end of this.
4 or 5 hours. So not really too much going on here in terms of kind of fermentation process going.
Turn around here, this is one we went previously.
Now that is fermentation.
Wow.
Once fermentation's complete, this gets transferred over into this container here. The liquid from the washbacks is passed through Springwave's 3 copper stills: a low wine still, a spirit still, and the wash still, which, unlike many distilleries, is fired by a live flame. The spirit produced by this process is then transferred into the spirit safe, where the stillman monitors its progress.
The SRWV here at Springbank, the spirit strength is usually between 70-71% alcohol. We'll take using a Campbellton water source from Crosshill Loch. We'll add the water in and reduce the spirit to 63.5. Filling head here, just got a sensor. And when the spirit hits the sensor, it'll cut out and litres are recorded in the meter here for customs and excise. And then from there, it goes to the warehouse for maturation. For the first floor for customs, you wait, you have a tier weight and a gross weight, shows the litres will match.
This is basically 90% handmade. And I feel like there's a lot of human involved in this. There's a beauty in it. It looks amazing. I bet this whiskey is going to taste amazing. I'm not sure if it's going to be like good for your health, but like it should taste like heaven.
The filled casks are then transported to Springbank's dark, moist warehouse and left for a minimum of 3 years. The age at which a spirit legally becomes whiskey. The whiskey is matured for various time periods under the watchful eye of their distillery manager, and some are bottled especially for limited edition ranges. One in particular was bottled 50 years after it had been filled, giving it a truly unique character.
The change in the size of the cask or the amount we're using, we either pull 1 or 2 bars and if required, reduce the whiskey down to the required strength. Once it's been reduced through into the filling head, for some of the guys that take the measure here and do whether it's a 70 centiliter or 75 centiliter cross run. From there, it's onto the light to make sure there's no further impurities in the whiskey. It's through the capsule machine. So we have the labeling machines where the guys put on the front and the back labels on them. So you can see very, very much hands on.
This is like the half machinery, half people.
Very people oriented. Travels down our line to where the
If I'm going to build like a distillery like this, I would do it computer mostly, and then some people at the end like who can do QC, who is going to be doing the QC, and put it into like the cask. This cask. It's nice. It's nice having a machine like this too. It looks amazing. You can provide a lot of jobs here, which is also like a really good thing, right? Is it good for business? Not so sure. Might be. The labors in our island is okay. It's not that crazy. But in Vietnam, it's probably more labor than machinery, because labor in here is a lot cheaper. So, but for me, if I build a distillery, it's probably 80-20. 80 machinery, 80 automation, 20% labors.
the correct packaging. We're very, very proud of 100% everything on site.
This looks amazing.
Thank you so much for allowing me to come into Springbank and learn from you guys. I really appreciate that. And I've learned so much about the whiskey making process. Part of my tradition is I bring a bottle from where I came from and learned to the next place that I learned from, and I learned a whole bunch about the whiskey making process from you guys. So this is from Grote Constantia. It's called Grand Constance, and again, it's a token of my appreciation for allowing me to come learn from you guys. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Amazing. Look, a lot of effort has to be put in not to get a good result. Yes, basically life. I don't know shit about life, but hey, we will come back to our web developments.
So to start thinking mobile first, what I'm actually going to do is completely remove my media query. So let's take this out and take that out. So we're left with this. Now we don't want this code just floating around like that. So I'm actually going to take this text align center and make it the new default. And I'm going to take this flex direction column and I'm going to make that the new default. And delete this extra stuff here. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to delete these for the moment, and you're going to see why. When I delete that, and if we hadn't had the media query there at all, when we go and take a look at it, at small screen sizes, we're almost done. We've sort of done the mobile first design. There's not a lot to it here that we're missing. There's some spacing issues. We need a little bit of margin to separate some stuff. A few little decorations here or there. This just needs the box. We need to fix that typography thing I talked about, but you're sort of 90% of the way there. The problem with working on the big screen first is writing a bunch of code, and then you're overwriting it all at the small screen size. You're resetting your columns back to what they were before. You're changing things to be back the way if you hadn't done it. It's exactly what it would have looked like. Now the problem is, when we get to the big screens, it just starts stretching and not looking so nice. So what we want to do is build in that point where all of a sudden at one point we go, okay, we're big enough, now we're going to add the 2 columns in there. So that's where the media query comes in. So we can add that back in now at media.
So we always going to do small and big.
To say this time is...
So we're not going to override stuff, we're just adding more stuff, right? We just basically change the layout. If we go big and then small, you have to remove stuff, or you have to override it stuff.
Do a min width
It's not nice.
instead of a max width of 675 pixels. So now we can say our
When it is over 675, it's going to change to that state, what you state into the media query.
inner flex direction is row. So right away, by doing that, if we come and take a look, when we hit the right screen size, oh, now we have 2 columns, and we have 1. And it's working pretty good. Now I never set any sizes on this, this is just the defaults that are popping up right now. Now I could say my main has the width of, I said 75, my aside has the width of 20, and that's it. I don't have to worry about, whoops, I don't want that there. I don't have to worry about overwriting this anywhere. I don't have to go and all of a sudden say, whoop, I also need now in my media query, like I don't have this as my default that I then need to reset up to 100%. So we've just set it one time, we've redefined it for the big screen because the small screen was perfect. And in general, small screens are much simpler. So it's a lot easier to do all of your small screen stuff and then add on a few little things here and there.
Wait, let me move.
So now if we go look, we have our gap between there and everything is starting to fall into place. Cool, right?
I feel good.
The most work we sort of have to do is with this, we need to add this line that's going to be coming through on here and just add some spacing between our articles in general, because if we come and take a look at them, we'll go to our small screen. We are not spaced out properly. The spacing on things isn't very good. These are really stuck together. We're going to add in that spacing that we need right now. If we come and we look at the original design, we do have a lot more space around my date. This spacing actually looks pretty good. We need a lot more space here and here with this line coming through. So let's start with just getting the space around my date and my 3 comments thing that's right there. Now where would we do that? We don't even need to go into our article to do that right now. We need the first part, since we're just looking at something in there, is actually in the typography. So we can come back up, and that is my article info. We don't have a selector for it, so I'm just going to copy that. We have the read more, so we can come down here and put my article info. I want you to create the spacing for it with one line of CSS. I want you to use the shorthand and add in that empty space. So if you weren't sure if it's margin or padding, again, people mix those up all the time, but I think you won't have confused it yet because we've been using almost exclusively margin up until now. Once we start doing more projects with padding, you might start mixing them a little bit. The spacing's pretty big on it. I want to make it even on the 2 sides. This is where it depends a little bit how you like to work though. And the reason I'm saying that is I tend to always like putting margin bottoms only, but I have exceptions. If you're only dealing with margin bottoms, it definitely makes your life a little bit easier, but sometimes it's nice to have a margin top just to simplify things. So I'm going to do that so I don't have to add a margin bottom on my image, and I'm just going to put this space and this space all on the date. It looks quite a bit bigger than my font size, so I'm going to start with like a 2.5M and a 0. Maybe it's too big, I think it might be, but I tend to go bigger and then shrink down. And there's a really good reason that I do that. A lot of the time with margins, there's this thing that happens where you always end up putting them too small. And then you think, it's not bad, but maybe, no, just go bigger. Always go bigger than you think. So start with a big number and slowly reduce until you're happy with it. So it does look a little bit big, so let's just drop that down to 2. And I think that looks much better.
Drop it down to 2.
That is going to be adding in the underline after our continued reading here. So that line that goes all the way across the bottom. I want you to think about where you do that, how you do that, how you pull it off, how you create the spacing that you need on the 2 sides of that line. So what, you have to jump into the index, look at the markup a little bit, try and analyze it, and see where you'd put that and how you think you might be able to pull that off. If you get a little bit stuck, that's fine. There's a bit of a trick to this one. It's not complicated, but it's not always something you think of when you're first starting off with this stuff. We'll choose the underline after our continued reading here. So that line that goes all the way across the bottom. I want you to think about where you do that, how you do that, how you pull it up.
Hover is going to have a what is the state is going to be? Hovers 1 pixel.
How would you create the spacing that you need on the 2 sides of that line? So what, you have to jump into
and then margin.
Look at the markup a little bit. When you think of, I'm going to do is in my layout, I'm going to come down and down and down and down, and we're going to create a new section here called articles, because I am going into my article itself and I'm breaking that down a little bit now. So for this, I want to take my article featured, because this is the only one that has the underline on it, and I'm going to add a border bottom to it. So that's going to create that line a lot like we did on our navigation actually. So border bottom, and we can give it the color that we need. We'll give it 1 pixel and we'll make it a solid line. Let's go and take a look at how that looks. So there we go, we have the line that's actually showing up, but the spacing and everything is off. It's just not where exactly we need it to be. How can we fix that? But we need 2 different things. The first one is, I'm going to add padding, but I only want the padding on the bottom, and I'm going to do it with the shorthand just to illustrate why. So I'm going to do 1 M of padding, and we'll go take a look. And you can see it's pushing everything inward. And you know what, let's also give this a background color to make it super clear what's going on. So we're going to give this a pink background so we can look at what's happening. So we can see the size of my featured article is exactly the same, but when I added that padding, it pushed everything inside that box a little bit. And if we make that a bigger number, it's going to push it even more. So we're pushing all inside. But you'll notice that the border is staying on the outside of my padding. So the border's all the way over here. So if this padding was only on the bottom instead of being on all these sides, it would be creating empty space right here where we want it. So I can take this down to maybe back down to a 1. And I can also switch over to padding bottom. If you wanted to use the padding shorthand, it's perfectly fine there. Mention if you're only putting it on one side, I don't think personally there's anything wrong with using the padding bottom or padding right or that type of thing. It's when you're
increase the white space. Padding. Let's make it bigger. Push. Let's push the element out. Margin. Cut into it. Okay.
You're using 2 or 3 sides, it's a little bit faster to actually do it with the shorthand. But if you use the shorthand for everything, it's kind of cool to be consistent, so I don't blame you. So you can see it has created that space we want. My border is right there. Now I also want to increase this space a little bit, and we can do that with my margin. So it's in margin bottom, and I'm going to make it way too big for now, just to illustrate that it is working. And so you can see this is my pink box. The padding was working inside, so that's why we have a gap right here. Then I have my border, and then I have my margin after. So if you go way back to when we learned about the box model, it was always padding first, then a border, then a margin. We don't use borders terribly often, so sometimes we forget where they flow into the whole box model thing. So if you didn't get this, it's completely fine. Now this is
padding,
space.
borders, margin.
And of course,
that's a rule. That's a rule.
Background.
I'm just trying to get out from this lesson is rules, like simple rules. Whatever the rules I can like that I can get from here is extremely useful, way more useful than the definition of stuff, right? The rules is border first, padding, and then margin. If you have a borders, right?
You know what? I switched that, but I think a 2 and 2 looks a little bit better just to make this spacing completely equal. I think it'll look better in the long run if we do that. So there we go. I think that is great for my featured article. Everything is good there. Now we're going to jump into styling this one here, and this is where we had that trick that I talked about. And actually, you know what? I think that would be better in its own video because it's a little bit weird, and I want to be able to focus on it or find this video again if you need to reference it. So I'll see you in the next video. We'll take a look at how we can change the order of the content in there to match the design where the image is actually on top, and this one, the text is on top.
CSS always make me sleepy because there's nothing much to understand. It's all about nice.
So this image on the left is what we currently have, and we're aiming something that looks a little bit more like this, and you can see there's a pretty big difference between the two of them right now with the order of everything. And I said there's a good reason for that. So in this one, we're just going to fix the order of it, then we're going to worry about positioning things a little bit within that space. If we come down and we take a look, let's go back to our markup here and come down to our recent articles. What we've done is created our article recent. Inside of our article recent, we have the main and we have the recent secondary. Now this is going to be really useful when we get to the big screen sizes because we want 2 columns. That's the main reason I created these 2 separate divs, is so at large screens we can have the 2 columns. Right now though, we only have 1 column because we're on small screens, but we need to rearrange the order of everything. So what I want to do is I want to give, let's come up, we'll come over here to our styles and we can do our article recent. With display flex we can change the order, but first when I do display flex it has created 2 columns, so I want you to go ahead now and change that back so it wouldn't be 2 columns. I want them to stack one on top of each other. So we do that with our flex direction and switch that over to a column, and now we have it back pretty much exactly how we had it before. But now we can play around with ordering.
Guys, let me get some coffee first. Let's drink some coffee.
And this is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is, to change the order of something, we go and we do it on the child itself. So we have our article recent main, and we had article recent secondary. And on different things within a flex, you can literally apply an order to them. So if I said order 2, and I can come on this and say order 1, it's going to switch the order of them. You might have even noticed that the order of it sort of jumped around. So if we go and take a really quick look, you can see that it actually has changed. Our image is on top and everything else is on the bottom, and that's awesome.
Huh?
That's super cool, right? So why would we do this? Again, it's
Wait.
recent secondary.
Main
And on different things
article
within a flex, you can
recent.
literally apply an order to them. So if I said order 2, and I can come on this and say order 1, it's going to switch the order of them. You might have even noticed that the order of it sort of jumped around. So if we go and take a really quick look, you can see that it actually has changed. Our image is on top and everything else is on the bottom, and that's awesome. That's super cool, right? So why would we do this? Again, it's to be focused on keeping...
Wait a minute. Wait, give me 1 second. Right. Order 1. Recent post is this one. Recent post. This. Continue reading.
The markup making more sense and the logical order here as if there was no CSS that loaded in. So somebody could still read it in a way that makes sense as if there's no CSS. And if we want to make visual changes, we can.
Change from that. Get out. Let's go up here. Order 1. Order 2. Oh, okay. I see. So it's basically setting this as order 2. So now it's drop down, and then this come up. Okay. Pretty interesting.
And if we want to make visual reordering, we can, because we have
Interesting.
a hierarchy that we're following that still is drawing the eye to the right place. If the CSS were to fail, it would make a lot more sense the order that we see it in here. Now, closer to when you are, the first it's going to come. You're literally saying this should be first, this should be second, this should be third. Just for fun, if you wanted to, you could try doing it. What would happen if I gave it 0? Well, guess what? It means it's smaller than 1, so it's
Tastes amazing.
or then, what happens if I give this a -1? Well, that's smaller now, so it goes first. So it's the smaller your number, the earlier it is, and you can have 100 items, and you can give them all in order, and that would be a nightmare to control and to set up. But if what floats your boat, go for it. But I'm going to stick with my 2 and a 1. If you have 2 things that have equal order, they're going to go in the order they were originally in the markup, so they're going to follow whatever they had here because they have the same value. So if you don't apply anything,
You don't want to mess with order a lot, because I feel like it has to take some processing unit, and it is going to be slower for your website, right? I'm assuming it has to read, oh, order 1. Oh, that stuff is order 2, so we go and we move it down.
One back to a 2. It might even be worth putting a comment in your code just to explain why you're bothering to do this. If you think it's not clear enough, or if you'd be coming back later and maybe think you might be confused by something like that. This lesson is focused really on order, but I do want to just finish up a little bit on here. So the other thing I want to do is on my article recent, just add a little bit of margin bottom to them of say 2M to create that space here, just so it's not sticking to the image of the next one that we have in there, because if not, it doesn't look very nice. So just adding in that empty space is a good thing. And again, go with a bigger margin than you might expect. We do have a layout to be basing things on if you're looking back at your layout as well. The last thing while we're here, though, is you might be going, we just added some space here, but the last thing you might be wondering about is this gigantic space that we're getting here. Part of it is we have our H2 here that has a margin top, and we have this, which we added a big margin bottom on. That's causing some problems. And you might be going, well, shouldn't those margins be collapsing? And normally they would be collapsing, but there's something weird with Flexbox and collapsing margins. They don't collapse anymore. That's only for the direct children. So I'm not going to get too much into that. We're definitely going to run into more situations with it. But we need the fix for this, for this little time frame anyway, is the fix which we need to do on our site at large anyway. So I'm just going to scroll all the way up to my H1, H2, H3 here and say have a margin top of 0, because we're going to run into other issues with that if not anyway. So if we go and take a look, that just sort of sucks everything up a little bit closer and looks a little bit nicer. I'm going to explore how you could potentially get that to be even closer when we look at the media query in the next one, where we're going to pull this over to the right side and suck that up even more. That's an exploration video more than...
All the CSS is basically for aesthetic and then user experience, user interface, stuff like that.
In a best practice video, but we'll see that.
There's not much logical stuff in here. All right.
So there was one unintended consequence I didn't notice before, which was we got rid of the spacing on our titles, and that got this stuck on there. So we'll fix this in this video as well. But the main focus will be here, like I mentioned, getting it to pop on over to this side at certain sizes. So the way I'm going to do it now, the reason I'm saying it's not a best practice video as much as a exploration video is because if you have a really long title, this would cause some problems. There's the potential for overlapping, but I just want to show you something that we haven't looked at yet. It's something that I try and avoid when I can, but I want to show it to you anyway, and I think it is fun for the layout purposes on this one, and something that's worth exploring, because while you try and avoid it, it's good to know that it is a possibility, and that is negative margins. So I'm going to go all the way down to my layout area. And we're going to go all the way down until we find my articles. There we go. And I'm going to create a new media query because we're going to be dealing with these two pretty much. So at media, as far as the size of where do I create this media query for, don't create media queries based on the size of certain devices or set devices, because you can't always do things that you want to do, or those devices, you know, people make too many media queries because they're trying to match certain devices when they don't need one. Or in this case, I'm trying to really base it on my layout. I'm sort of just guessing at the size. We're going to tweak it a little bit as we go. So I'm going to do 500 pixels for now, and let's see how it goes from there. So inside my media query, what I want to do is select my article, recent, main, and I'm going to give this a margin top of negative, I don't know, let's start with negative 1em and just see how that affects things.
It's going to...
You can see they sort of gotten a little closer together. Let's just try changing that maybe to negative 2. You can start seeing these are starting to overlap, and we can bring that maybe up to a whole negative 3. And they're starting to line up how we want them to. I'm going to switch that to a 2.5 because I think it's going to be bang on how I want the top of the text is sort of lining up. Now, as I mentioned, this can create text overlap, so it's probably not a best practice overall here. Yeah, so this is my longest one, so I'm going to base it on this title. But what would happen if you had a really long title? It would break this whole layout. So I'm going to show you how we can do it with a negative margin. So, you know, if I bring this up really big, it's pulling it up on top of other things. And it's one of the problems with negative margins, but it is important to know you can have a negative margin because sometimes it does come into use and is useful to have. So that is perfect. Now, the other thing I'm going to do in this media query is do my article info and say that as a text align to the right. And there we go, we have the layout that I wanted, where we have those going like that. Now the problem is, where's the media query kicking in? Where's 550 pixels? So we're going to shrink, and it's really, really close. But on this one, it's looking perfect. So, you know, it's one of those ones where you have to judge it by eye a little bit. I'm going to pump it up to 550. Just because I don't want those to get so close to each other. So it gives us this small little range where we have two columns, and then where it pops over back to the big layout where we're going to have to change what that looks like anyway. So that is how we can go and do something like that with a little bit of hackery to give ourselves this fake two-column look based on the way our markup is. Again, make sure you keep this really, really simple, because it's keeping cooking simple. If this was how to keep your cooking simple, all of a sudden I'm a little worried. We have overlap, and it's causing problems. So while negative margins can be fun for creating cool layouts or cool effects sometimes, and sometimes you want overlapping content, it's always possible you want two things to sort of overlap, and there's other ways of doing it with positioning as well, which we're going to explore later. But just when you use the negative margin, be very, very aware that this is a possibility. So I think what I'm going to do, while we've explored it, while we've seen it, if you want to sort of rebuild this on your own at one point and keep it in your code, because I do think it looks really nice, with how I've set this up, it's just not something we can do in a responsible way. So we've looked at how to do it, but now we're just going to take it all off, because I think it's going to cause more problems in the long run. And it's really important that you keep your code as functional as possible and that it can accommodate for all these situations. So if you're ever putting together a demo site, make sure you don't only use short text. Even like if you're doing a business card template, don't use a really short name. Kevin Powell is not a good name to use. If you want to get a really, really long name on the template, make sure that it can work with super long names and that it's not running into issues. So the same thing here. We want to test short titles and long titles to make sure everything will work with your code along the way. Let's start by fixing this problem here. We're finding simplicity in life is stuck to the top. You could 100% do this with the margin top somewhere here just to push things down. But I like trying to use margin bottoms as much as possible to create space instead of mixing up margin top sometimes and margin bottom other times. There's always going to be exceptions. There's always times maybe you won't do that. I think this makes the most sense because you don't know if you're always going to have a title as your very first thing. Maybe you have something else that's actually coming up here as the very first thing. So I think the best course of action is actually to put a margin bottom on this rather than having a margin top on this, because again, maybe another page, the first thing will be an image or to be something other than your title here. I think it's just a bit more robust doing that. So this doesn't even have to go anywhere. You just do this on our nav header. I think we have a header there. We do. So we can just come on here and add a margin bottom. I'll do 3M to give us a very general space because so the spacing here and here looks more or less equal. I think it just looks nice and balanced. If you'd want that to be 2, I wouldn't argue with you. I think you can pull that off as well. So that fixes that. But the more important thing for this video is, while our recent articles are looking good at small screen sizes, when we get to big screen sizes, we want this to become a 2-column layout that just looks quite a bit different. So let's go and do that. We'll scroll all the way down to the bottom.
2 columns layout.
Section, and I want to create a media query. So I'm going to ask you to create your media query first on here, and actually see if you can remember how to turn it from a 1-column into a 2-column all on your own. I'm going to use the same breakpoint that I used for my navigation here because I want everything changing at the same time. I think it's a bit more consistent when you do that way, instead of just having all these random different numbers throughout. Of course, that does depend on the layout.
So let's do min width. Right, we add media query. Add media, and then we do min width, min or max, minimum, min width. Let's stick with min width first. Min width is minimum width. It's going to be 675 pixel. Right, min width. So if it's smaller than that, if it's bigger than that, it's going to be yes. And then we do, what is it called? Article secondary, article main, what? Article reason main, article reason secondary. Right, let me zoom out this code. Okay, dokie. Okay. Row main, right? Main. Article. Container flex. Right, we have the aside. Aside is here. So I'm assuming it's article reason, article reason, simple decoration, Wait, give me a second, guys. Give me a second. So where do I find this? This right here, right? How to keep your cooking simple. How to keep your cooking simple. So article reason. Where's the child element? Here and here, right? So every article reason has to be article dot article reason, and then we do this, and then we do display flex, and then right now we try this. When it's big enough. Why is it not changing? What a scam. What a freaking scam. Article reason. Dot article reason. Yes. Do we have to flex? Flex direction. Going to be oi. Row. Guess we have to override this. Right. It's looking good. Looking good. Now the image has to be something else. It's going to be display block.
On the last video, I used a different number for my breakpoint, but in general, I try and stick with the same breakpoints just for now. Now, don't do the said that article recent is we don't have her to a row, and right away we should see now we have 2 rows of content in here. Now we can come on to my article recent main. And we're going to want to do a little bit of work on that, and my article recent secondary, and do a little bit of work on that one as well. So I want the secondary one to actually be pretty small, so I'm going to give this one a width of about 25%. If I go and look though, it's going to be tiny, and this is Flexbox trying to be smart about things, because it knows this one should be 100%. Why is that 100% though? Think about it. Why is this one trying to be 100%? It's trying to be 100% because we never gave it a default width, and by default any block level element will be set to 100%. So 100 and 125, it can't fit in this area, so it's doing its best to go, okay, well this one's allowed to be smaller, so I'm shrinking it way down. It's sort of how Flexbox thinks. We're going to get more into actually what's happening with this a little bit later on, but for now, what I'm just going to do is come on here and say this one has a width of 70%. And if we go and look, the only problem is we have all this leftover space right here. I don't want leftover space here. I want that leftover space to be in between the 2 of them. How can we do that? Do you remember?
Justified.
Go ahead and do it if you do.
Easy. Justified. Justify content space between. Alright, easy.
So to put the space between them instead of all the way on the right, I can come on here and do a justified content space between that. Now I get the gap coming here instead. You might say it's not reaching the end here, but it's because the lines are breaking. If I have a long word that can't fit here, it's just going to go down to that side. So it really is making it all the way out to the edge. It just really depends on the text that you have in there and the size of the screen that you have it on. Sometimes it'll look like it's closer, and other times it might look, and again, it's just based on where the words are breaking. I actually don't like that breakdown of stuff so much, so I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. I'm going to push you up to 30, and I think I'll bring this one down to like a 68 or 67, because I think that space can be a little bit tighter like that. So cool. That's looking pretty good. We have my 2 columns that are working, and when we get to the small screen sizes, everything is stacking, and our order is looking fine there.
Bada bing, bada
our
boom.
order is looking fine here. So everything is fantastic, except for one thing.
Fantastic.
One thing that's not fantastic is the order here is not good. If we come and take a look, when we're at big screens, We want our image all the way at the top, and then we want to have our info here, then we want to have the title. And that's just not what we have going on here, because I put it all in the wrong order when I did the markup. So what I want you to do is we can work inside of this media query. I want you to play around and get that to work on large screens in the right order for everything. Of course, once you've done that, I'll go ahead and look at how we can do it, but it's all things we already know how to do, so go ahead and tackle that. So I hope you found it. If you didn't, don't worry too much about it, because I was trying to trick you a little bit with this one and make you think a little bit. So if we come and look at my markup, we have the featured article here. My featured article has everything we need in it, but we want to change the order of these. And say you did article title, just for fun. If I came down to here and I say article title. Order 99, that should push it all the way to the end, which should be the last thing everywhere. But nothing happens. It's not actually changing. So if you were playing around with the order of things and you were like, why isn't it changing?
Flex, right?
It's normal. The reason it's not changing is we can't use order unless we have display flex on something already. So what I need to do is article feature display flex. But of course, when I do that, it just causes chaos because now everything is becoming a column. I even got some side. Oh, it's just a mess. So I want you to fix that now. And once
fix
this, if you weren't able to get the order working, go in and put the order on it, and we'll take a look at the rest of it together in a second.
Right. So how to fix this? We do bam 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 bam. Just flex direction. Flex direction is going to be column. Then we do this. And now we can mess with the orders. So let's say you want to mess with article title. What we can do is we go down, grab article, call this title. So the orders only work when the parent of that element is a display flex. Display flex, you can do all this. Other than that, say no. So we are going to do order 99 burgers. Right now we have the text at the end of it. Oi. Yes, now you have a text at the end of it. So let's say you want to, instead of like having it here, you can do 1, 2, 3. So if you do 03, 3 is nice. Then run. Wait a minute. So 1, 2, 3. Why is it at the end of it? Let's do 1. Still at the end. Do I have to state the order of other stuff? 0. Right. 1. Let's go to the end. So I'm assuming I has to specify the order of all the elements within this article feature, right?
I'm actually going to make those two. If I don't include that, give my article info an order of -1 to pull it up to in between those two. If I don't include that, it's first going to be my image, then it's my title, then it's this, and I want this to be on top there. Whoops, still on my console. So I can have that -1 on there. So first I have my image, then I have this, then I have my title, and then I can get into the rest of it. And it's starting to look pretty good. I'm pretty happy overall with how this is starting to come together. I think it's looking really, really good.
Right. Sure stuff. Cheerful. If we do it on our own, it's going to be harder.
What we're going to do now is use a really interesting property called object fit. It's a relatively new property as far as properties go, and it is really, really awesome. It's actually something that existed for background images, which we haven't even looked at yet, which is crazy. We're doing all this cool stuff, and we haven't even done a background image yet. I'm only going to do it inside the media query, because I think it's going to do now is use a really interesting property called object fit. It's a relatively new property as far as properties go, and it is really, really awesome. It's actually something that existed for background images, which we haven't even looked at yet, which is crazy. We're doing all this cool stuff, and we haven't even done a background image yet. I'm only going to do it inside the media query, because I think at these screen sizes, I just want to see my complete image. I think that looks nice that we have a nice big image like that. But when I get to these two columns, I don't want my image to be so tiny. I want to make it taller, but I don't. If I make this taller, it's also going to have to be wider, because we're keeping the image in proportion. I'm going to cheat a little here. These are article images. Article images. I'm going to give them a width of 100%. And I'm giving them a height of 300%, just for fun and to show you what happens. So if I come look at they're super stretched. They're also overlapping each other, which is a bit of a problem. But we can see that these images are actually super stretched out.
Pixelated.
So I can't make my images taller without the risk of stretching them like this, unless we bring in something called object fit. In object fit, we have a few different options. The one that you're probably always going to use is called cover. When we use cover, what it's actually going to do is it's going to crop my image inside of that space. So let's fix this to be a little bit more of a realistic number. Let's put like 400 pixels here. And so you can see it's cutting off the sides of my image. My image
looks nice. That looks amazing.
Look like this. This is what the original one looked like right here.
Yes.
Whereas on this version here, I can see
so it's basically just trying to fit into that 400, whatever it could take. Fit into that without shifting it. No.
Cropping the image.
Cropping the
image.
image.
The object fit cover, it's squishing the image. And this looks terrible. I never want to see this on a website. If you do this on a website, you show it to me.
You should be ashamed of yourself if you do this like this. Because this look like someone just go to the toilet, wipe his ass, and then this is the thing that he get. This is the thing that the paper is on the paper.
I won't be proud of myself because I didn't teach you properly. I made a mistake if you do this. So do not squish your images. But this object fit cover, it saves us. It lets us pull off controlling the size of an image. Now the one thing is it will crop your image. So while these two are looking great, here we have this little leaf sticking out the side. It isn't ideal. Now one thing you can do is you can also do an object position, and I can say left. And what that means is it's keeping the left side of my image in instead of the center of the image, which is the default. But no,
I didn't learn this object stuff. It's actually might be nice now to learn about object fit, object position. It's nice.
Image, and I probably ruined that image as well, because it's keeping the left side and the left side of this. So we're just seeing like this part of my image here right now, which we don't want. That doesn't look very good. So for this one, I am going to leave it as just the object fit cover. I'm not going to bother with my object position, but I do want you to be aware that that is an option. And I think I'm going to bring this down to like 250 pixels. And I'm also going to give this the minimum height of 250 pixels. If it needs to get bigger for some reason, sure, why not? But I want to make sure at minimum the height is 250 pixels. And I think that looks a little bit closer to what we had in our layout. Maybe we could make that 300 instead of 250. You can see, I think at the smaller screens, that it's looking pretty good. It's getting narrow. It has a nice aspect ratio to it. And then as that gets bigger, I'm pretty happy with that. If you'd prefer a different number, you can play around with it a little bit and find something that you think looks a little bit nicer. It's completely up to you. But I'm going to stick with that. I think that's a really cool property. A nice little trick for letting us bring in one image in two different places and having them cropped completely differently, and having it work at the other screen size and it's still showing up in here. So like this is the same image that we have here, which is really, really cool and handy that we can do that all with one image instead of having to load in 3 different versions of the same image. Now sometimes you might want to do that. There are ways of actually loading in different images based on different screen sizes.
This is a nice layout.
Early on, while we're just getting our feet wet with all of this, this is a nice, easy way to be able to do it.
Yes. Right, we move on. How are we doing right now? So we have... Okay, so we're about to finish the 4 hours And then we would do the responsive design challenge. Then stepping up on style. Okay.
For our widgets, we have
We are
these
moving
sidebar widgets
quick,
created here. So
quick.
we class sidebar widget, and we want to make them look a little bit like this. So they have a
We have 1 week left. So 1 week. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that we can be able to finish it within the 26th. We still have this React, which is we want to take the slow. API, take it slow. Next level JavaScript, maybe with our JavaScript skill we can be a little bit faster. But React basics, API, Flexbox, maybe we can go fast with that. But hey, but code review, we don't really have to watch that, right?
really big, thick border on them. The color is not this dark gray. It's a lighter gray than that. I'll let you experiment a little bit, or if you link to the Adobe XD file, you should be able to get the exact color that is, as well as the exact thickness. I'm just going to estimate it and hope for the best. But one thing I'm a little bit worried about with our current layout, though, is this space is already pretty narrow here, and it's going to get a little bit tighter once we add that once we add the border and that spacing inside of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, right now, change the size of those before we get into those widgets, because I am scared we're going to run out of room for them. I just think it's going to be a little bit too tight. So here, I'm going to change this width down to a 70, and this one up to a 25. I don't know, we might have to readjust again after, but I think it's going to help us out just by giving us a little bit of extra space there. And now what I want you to do, let's go all the way back down, and I'm going to create a little comment here saying widgets. And I want you to come down and style them as much as you can. It's using a bunch of stuff we've already looked at, so go ahead and try your best, at least adding the border as well as that space on the inside. And if you feel up to it, also doing the typography. Once again, I didn't give it to you here, but we know what the fonts are. You can adjust and play with the font size. If you do look at the Adobe XD link, you will be able to get the actual font size that was used, but it will be in pixels from there. So make sure you convert it over to rem. If you're not sure how to do that, you can watch when I do it, because in just a few seconds after I give it to you.
Right. We want to solve this on ourselves. So basically, what we want to do is changing this text. Right, it's about me. It's probably going to be bold. Ubuntu. Right. Blog post title. Yes, that is the big one. Small one. About me is going to be. It's going to have this, right? 0.85, 0.875, 0.875. Recent posts. All right, we do H2. Laura. Get out. H2 recent post. Want this H2 to have a style of what? Let's go up here. This is solving problem. H2 has a font size of 2.85. 0.785. Ubuntu. Right, we do H2 has a font size 0.7875. It's going to be rem. Right. It's looking. Font weight is going to be bold. Yay. First of all, fonts family. Ubuntu. Where's Ubuntu? Ubuntu. And then what is going to be the next one? Sans serif. Alright. Yeehaw! Nice. That's nice. Is it 0.785? This look way bigger. Way bigger. 0.1. But post title. Looking like it. Yeah, let's go fast with this. We do, what is it called? Div. This div is going to has a background colors, right? This all have a background color. Has to be display block. All right. Why is it not wrapped in the div? I find life happier. Where the frick is that? I find life happier. I find life happier. Here, sidebar widget. This has to have a border, right? Dot sidebar. Sidebar has to have a sidebar widget, right? Widget has a borders of something. Sidebar widget going to has a going to have a borders. How big is this? Probably like a 10 pixel at least. 10 pixel solid gray. A lot bigger. 20. What is the color here? And we can do opacity 0.25. Right? Can we do that? Not working. Right. Can we do 15? Was it not separate out? Okay. What we can do is some padding, but no, the color is going to change. Let's try this. Background colors. It's going to be gray. Gray. Then we can add padding. No, that thingy has to be. So I'm assuming it's a border. I just don't know how big could it be. Let's do 10. And we can do margin. Margin bottoms. Margin bottom. It's going to be, how big could this be? Let's do 1 EM. The parents doesn't have any, right? So we do, what do we do? Where's the parents of this? The sidebar doesn't have anything. Right, so we do, what do we do? We do 1 rem, just 1 M. Try it out. It's look nice. It's good. And then we want a padding. 1 M as well. 1 M. Now that's look good. We can do a 20 pixel. 20 pixel. What is the color here? 70, 70, 70, 70. Going to be 70, 70, 70. Right. Borders. Opacity. Opacity. RGBA colors. Yes, we load the RGBA in. Baby, 70, 70, 70, 70, 70. And we do 0.25. Now that's look a lot better. Looks, let's do 15. 15 sounds like a good numbers. Right, we do 15 here as well. Okay. Recent post. Right, we basically got all of it. Sexy. Sexy. Very hot. Very hot. We can add some padding down here. Yeah, we add borders. Border bottoms at the recent post. Where's the recent post? Widget recent post. Right. Dot here. Then we do borders. Bottom. Going to be 1 pixel. Solid. Going to be this color as well. 70, 70, 70. Right. Wait, what? Not that. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Has to have it at the end of this. At the end of the text here. Yes. Not the picture. But why is the picture like in front of this? It's weird. Weird. Keep cooking, simple. So I have to switch. Okay,
I'll be
let's
doing
him
it
do
myself
then.
as usual, though. Try and do as much as you can and see if you can pull it off before I take over. I hope you had a lot of success. Now let's dive in. Let's really add a marker too, but before we go on, maybe a 2 pixel border. It's really is check it out. This font size is going to get smaller. These are getting really, really narrow. Overall, nothing's broken. The titles are a little bit too big. The images are really, really small. We're sort of running into 2 options now when we're making something responsive like this, because it seemed to be working super well. I think at the large screen size, it's exactly what I want it to look like. So I don't want to modify it too much. We sort of have 2 options. One of them is to change our breakpoint. If we do that, we're going to be going through and potentially changing it in multiple places. I don't really feel like doing that because I don't want to have to reconfigure a whole bunch of things. So another option we have is to come on this and actually make sure it can't get too small. Because right now what's happening is it's clearly just getting too small. Whereas these are working fine. They're not ideal, but they're working okay. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So if we come onto my widget, let's go and find, not my widget, but my sidebar. So here we had our main and our aside. Now there's one disadvantage that when we do this, and that's that our justify content space between stops having enough of an effect on it, because at one point when we lock in that size, at one point they can actually hit each other. Because now that's locked in at that minimum size of 200 pixels, which I think is roughly the right size. Because here it doesn't look super super ridiculously small. It's borderline. Maybe I could actually change this breakpoint to be a little bit bigger. But while we're here, why don't we just come on the aside here and add a margin left of 1em to the whole thing, which is not a lot of space, but we don't want too much when we're at this really small screen size anyway. So at the big sizes, I think it's going to look pretty good. And then we get smaller, it's just going to prevent the two columns from colliding into each other by having that 1em
That's nice.
on the side there. So now we get smaller. Again, maybe this is a good point when we could be modifying the breakpoint on it if we really wanted to, but I'm not hating necessarily. And there we go. And this comes under a really good discussion about when you want to have your breakpoints, and it's really about adjusting to the layout and when things are working or not working. So if you really don't like this, you could come in and adjust your breakpoint at this point. I'm going to say it again. I've said this before. I'm going to keep saying it again. Breakpoints are not device specific. They are layout specific. When your layout is breaking, when your layout is not looking good, that's when you go ahead and create a new breakpoint or adjust a breakpoint that you already have. It's about your layout. It's not about what device it's looking at. Hundreds, maybe thousands of different phones now. They all have a little bit of a different size. There's so many tablets, there's laptops, and these little laptops, and there's big laptops. You don't know the device size somebody is on. So don't worry about finding specific numbers to use, and adjust it where your layout is working, and just make it work at the different screen sizes however you can. I'm pretty happy with this. If somebody happens to be here, there might not be a million people with this device width on it, but overall, I think I'm happy with that and how the whole thing is working. We could also allow this to get a little bit wider. I just wanted to make sure that we're limiting the max width of it for some people who are doing this tutorial on a smaller screen. They can see it reaching that maximum width. Titles. We're going to fix the order on this, and the titles, they need to be adjusted a little bit. So let's go and do that, and let's go and look at our index first. And what do we call them? We call that widget title. So this is where we have an H2 that it's really useful to have a class on, because pretty much all the styling on our other H2s, we didn't need to do very much on these, right? Because if we look back at our styles and we go all the way back up in our file here, a lot of it is handled right here on this H2. We set up the font family, we set up that, we set up the color, we set up the margin, we did everything here, but we're still dealing with an H2. This one just happens to visually look completely different. So this is where it's really, really handy to have this. So we have all of our article stuff. Let's come right here, widget title, and let's give this one a font size of 1 rem. The color is probably alright, but we need to change the font family over to Ubuntu. Just there we go. And we also want to make the font weight to be 700, because we want it to be, not 7,000, 700, we want it to be bold. I don't even want to know how bold 7,000 might be. So there we go. That's looking not too bad. Let's just go look back at the original design. Maybe the font size could be slightly bigger, but I'm going to stick with that. I'm pretty happy with it, actually. Just based on looking at it visually, we want to style these now and actually change the order of things over here. So how can we do that? Let's go and take a look back at our markup and see how we did it. So we had a div of widget recent post, and then we have the order of our widget recent title. You know what? I actually think these widget recent title, so that's looking good. Now these are too big, and I think these are actually supposed to be the same size as this. So let's go back up to our CSS file here. And widget title, I think what we could do is keep my widget title, but also have my post title. Don't forget the dot, and give those the font size of 1 rem here. So we don't need to have it necessarily on that one. So that'll help shrink down those a little bit, just so visually they're not as in our face. Now what you need to do is change the order of them, because this should be underneath the image and not on top of the image. It doesn't look great like now. The spacing is all off. So we've already looked at how we can do that when we did all those other order things. Give it a try.
Okay, with display flex. This is how I'm going to walk through this. Display flex, this sidebar thingy. Sidebar is going to be columns. Like this is going to be display like that. But we want to flex direction column so that it's going down. So flex, display flex has a default value for flex direction, always going to be row. So we want to switch that, override that with columns. And by doing that, it's going down now. So what we can do is we going to order display flex this columns. Then we have display flex this. It's going to be here, sidebar widget, right? About me, we don't need that. We just has to display flex the sidebar widget. Yes. Display flex this. Actually, display flex this. It's easier to solve this problem now. Recent post doesn't matters. Then flex direction columns. Then it's going to go down, and then you're going to do order H3 orders 1, order 2, and then image order 1. Simple.
If you didn't think logic as in lines that are coming in between the last one. Okay, so let's go and add those in. I'm going to do it like I did before. Okay, this has been round numbers 1 and 1. Do a visited margin bottom off so it doesn't add along the way on the bottom. So let's fix that right away and go look again. That's looking nice, but I need a little bit of space underneath, and I want some space in here. So we can right away add a margin bottom. We'll just go with 1M. See, I use a lot of trying round numbers, 1M, 1.5 rem, 2 rem. It helps with the consistency along the way. And doesn't that just, there we go. That looks pretty good, I think. Except we don't want this one here. This one is going to cause us some problems. So instead of styling it like this, so I'm going to show you a trick, something we haven't looked at before. I'm going to do a widget, recent post, last child. So this is another pseudo class. This is like hover and active and visited, but it's saying if it's the last child inside of something, I'm going to say border 0, and I'm going to say margin of 0. Because we want to take that margin bottom off so it doesn't add extra space. So I'll explain this in a second, but let's go and look, and there we go. Now everything is getting balanced out. We have a line here, we have a line here, but we don't have a line coming on this one at the bottom. So to explain what this is in a little bit more detail, let's go and look in my index. So we have our widget here, and our widget here, and this is the last child inside of this parent. If I were to come and add a paragraph here, now
not going to be last child.
This is no longer the last child, so this now has a border on it. That's pretty fun, right? I think that's pretty cool. So it's always about the state. Is this, if there is a widget recent post that happens to be the last child somewhere, we're going to turn off that border and that margin that we just added here. But otherwise, they should always have it, just like when we're...
So this is more about customization, right? You can do last child or second child. Can we do end child? I don't know.
So we have a normal style in a certain state, and when our mouse is hovering on top of a link, we're changing the state. This, instead of looking at a mouse, it's looking at its relationship to its parent and to its siblings. So it's a really, really fun and cool pseudo class that can come up on something. So let's go and take out that extra paragraph that's on here. And I'm not going to say, I'm going to do the footer now. I said we're going to wrap up the whole thing, and then the footer is so nice and easy. I never even put the text in there. So there we go. We have our paragraphs inside the footer, and if we go and look, it just has that text. The first one is bold, the second one isn't. So let's wrap this one up in a strong tag and close strong right there. And we can come into our styles. I'm going to come up a little bit here, all the way to here where I was doing like my header, my containers, all of that. I'm actually going to put the footer here.
Because the footer is this really generic item that's just everywhere. So we're going to give this one the background of that dark blue. We're going to give it a color. In this case, I'm going to give it white for now. I'm going to come back to this color later on, and we're coming back in the next module of this course, stepping up our style, because we're going to show you a cool trick. If you set another color on it or want to actually, use a color picker or get a specific value just to match that, that would be cool. When we do stepping up our style, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this. A text align center on there, and some padding. We'll
go with the 3M and a 0 because the padding looks pretty big on the top and bottom. And there we go. It is looking pretty good. The home page is all wrapped up and we're ready to move on to the other 2 pages, which are going to just fly by.
That sounds good. Good song. Good song.
Time for the recent articles page, which is this one here. I'm not even going to bother zooming in. It's so similar to this one. We can knock this whole thing out without even writing one line of CSS. We just have to literally edit a little bit of markup. So for this page, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by coming over to my files here and clicking on new file and creating a page called recent-posts.html. Now this could just be recent instead of recent posts. It's really up to you. But if you're going to do recent posts, it's either a hyphen or an underscore. Make sure there's no space in there. And what we want to do is come over to my index. I'm going to do Control A or Command A if you're on a Mac to select everything. And then I'm going to do Control or Command C to copy it. I'm going to come over to my recent posts and I'm going to paste that right in there. Because we have everything in place that we need for this page to work. The only difference between the 2 layouts is this one is styled just like all my other recent articles, whereas on the home page it was done as a featured article. So part of the reason I did this was to show you a little bit of how CSS gets reused across our pages, and we don't have to keep reading and rewriting styles. We have everything we need, literally everything we need. Now, if this was a real page, it'd probably be dynamic and the content would be automatically put in there. We might have more than 4 posts on a page, and these 2 pages wouldn't be so close to each other in terms of content, but layout-wise and CSS-wise, they'd still be identical to one another. So if we come through and we look here, we have my featured article, but I want that to be a recent article. So I'm going to copy my recent article here, Command C, paste it in here, and then I'm going to start just taking little pieces. So if you do a Command or Control X, it's a cut. So I can cut that title out, and then I can come and put that title right here. Put that image right here. I have my info. It goes right there. And this paragraph, it goes right here. Continued reading is the same in both of them, so we can just delete that whole thing and not even worry about it. Now we can't actually see that page yet because we haven't set up the links to be able to do it, because then the only place where those were linking together is in the navigation, and right now in my navigation I just have these placeholder links. So what I want you to do is fix the navigation links so you can go back and forth when you're on one page to the page. Make all of the navigation links work except for the about page, because obviously we haven't done that one yet.
Oh, away, run away, run away. You love it. Run away, run away, run away. Let go. Take no pressure.
Index.html here, and in my recent posts, what we can add, even though recent posts, this is the page we're currently on. And then I'll come over to my index, and I want to do the exact same thing there. So whether you're copying and pasting, or you're rewriting it again here, something that a lot of people don't realize, or they don't always think about, is that you need to have all of the links on all of your pages to be updated, so that you can go back and forth between the different pages. So if we save that and come take a look at it, this is my home page, and if I click on recent posts, my recent posts is working perfectly and everything is good there. And we haven't written one line of CSS, and we just finished a second page. So this shows you once you're finished one page, it's exaggerating a little bit. You often have to write a little bit of extra CSS, but in this case, we didn't have to write any at all. We're good to go on to the About Me page, which is a little bit different from the rest of them, so we might have to write a few extra styles, but overall, it is really similar.
I want to let go.
For the About Me page, there isn't a lot to do. We need to do. So I'm going to give you the link to the Adobe Export once again in the show notes as well as in the slides.
Run away, run away.
Make it easier to get the text, but also also to see what text is bold in here, because we do have quite a bit of text that you're going to want to make bold when you do this one. And we also have these H3s that are different from all the other H3s, so that need their own style, their own color, their own font size, and all of that set up on them. But otherwise, there isn't that much. Now, the very beginning of this is exactly like we did before. We can go to one of our pages, copy all the content, and paste it into a new page. So I want you to try and do that and delete everything that you do not need. We can keep some stuff, but we need to delete some other things. So go ahead and give it a try. Place the content in, see if it works the way you expect it all to work. And of course, as usual, I'm going to be jumping in and taking a look at it with you in just a minute. Okay, so let's go and make that new file. So new file, we can call it aboutme.html. Again, if you're going to have 2 words in it and you need name spacing, do not put a space with your keyboard. Make sure that it is hyphen separated. On my recent posts, copy all that, come over to my About Me and paste it all. Footer is good. In my sidebar, the sidebar is a little bit different on this one. We do not need this first widget anymore since we're on the About Me page. So we can delete that sidebar widget. And we don't need any of the articles, but I am going to keep the main there. So let's come through and just delete all of these articles. They're all vanished. I'm just fast forward. It's just, we just have to place content and put the right tags on everything. So I'll be back with you in a second with all of the content in place. So all of the content is in place. We're ready to go now and do the last finishing touches on this. So there's not a lot to do. If we come and look, I've also been really nice and I've set up all the links for you. So if you go and look between all the different videos, I have put those links in there. So if we come through and look back, there's original This About Me page. I could click on to have that where I use a language called Jekyll for my personal site right now. I'm looking at changing that maybe to 11T, or there's many others. There's a few of them that I'm looking into. For the next time I redo my own personal site, which are called static site generators, where it's mostly using HTML and CSS. So you're setting everything up with those, but then you can have the content. So if you're ready to do blog posts, it's sort of automatically putting the content into the template file that you created. A way of having something that could be taken to that next step once you're ready, but I wouldn't get there yet. Don't get ahead of yourselves. Let's first master how to make the responsive page, and then once you're super comfortable with that, you can start worrying about templating. So for the image, I want you to go ahead and do that. Set up the image so it is cropping just like we did on the other ones. I would do it with a maximum height, so limit the maximum height our image can have, and also maybe add a little bit of margin on the bottom of it. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how I would do it.
Fixing up some loose end.
We will be wrapping up this module in the next video, but this is the finishing touches on this site before we move on to stepping up our style, where we're going to look at some of the more finer tuned stuff. And let's see what we can do. So the first thing is the challenge that I gave you in the last one of fixing that image. I'm going to come and put it all the way up with my other image my image style. It could probably come into layout here as well, because this is all layout related stuff. The reason my other ones were article related, but this one technically could be used anywhere. It could be used inside an article. I ran into another post where maybe there is no sidebar and it's just this full image.
Wait, let me charge this.
Then it would work there too. So I think it makes sense in this case just to throw it up here where I have my images, which is all the way at the top here, because it's sort of like this image helper class. So I called it image full, and all I want to do is give this a max width. Not a max width. I said to give it a max height. I'm going to give it 300 pixels. But when I do that, it's trying to keep my image in proportion. So I'm going to give it a width of 100%. So it always stays at 100%. But the problem now is it's all squished and he looks a little bit chubbier than he should. So we want to come on and give it the object fit property with that cool cover value that we looked at, where it will crop the image for me. And it's looking perfection right there. And I think my image full will always have a margin underneath it. So our margin bottom, I'll just give it a 1M to give us a little bit of space. And you know what? I don't know if that'd be enough. So I'm going to do 2 before I even go and look at it. Ha, love it. I think that looks fantastic. So I'm super happy with that. It's looking really good. The next thing I'm going to do is just change the colors of these. And I think I'm done for this site. I'm really happy with it. As I said, in the next one, we'll be looking at stepping up our style. So for that, I'm in my typography section now. Let's go and look. Actually, those were just H3s. I never even gave them a class, which is cool. So I can just come here and say my H3 has a color of the bright blue color. Now I did group that with here. I could break the color out of here and apply it, but then I'm being a little bit lazy with my CSS now. We're defining two different colors and it's just always the second one that's going to win. I just don't feel like making another selector for it, to be honest with you, and I don't mind overwriting things a little bit. It's easier than breaking this out, having my H1, my H2 have all of, H3 have all of it, and then another H1, H2 that just has the color. Oh, I'm just going to put it like this, where I'm overwriting that a little bit, because it's going to work, and my colors are there. Oh no, my goodness, look, it changed these ones as well. That's not good. So we can go and fix that just really fast. As I said, we're wrapping up right now. So I'd want to come down to here, and those are my widget recent post title. So we want to grab that, paste it in there, and change the color of those color to the dark blue. And with
Just stalling, nothing.
one last thing we need to do, it has to do with our navigation. Can you think of what it is? Will I try and find this mistake here? So our navigation is working all fine. All the different pages are working, but our current page, and then now up this site, everything is looking really, really good. The page is do the exact same thing there where I pasted in. So we're saying what page, and next video we're gonna do a wrap up of all the before you graduate from Scrimba era, you start doing things on your own, and that is, we have a viewport meta tag, and I didn't include it in the lessons of this module. When we take a look in the browser window or on our desktop computer and we play with the width, it works really well, but this doesn't fully simulate how a phone will render a page. So the best case scenario is actually testing the sites you do on your actual phone, or multiple phones on an iPad, on your Android tablet, whatever it is. We want to actually test across different devices. The reason we have this viewport meta tag, we're going to see it in a second, but mobile devices, what they started doing is to prevent problems in how the page was rendered. When sites are not optimized for mobile devices and small screens, they would render a zoomed out version of the page and then they'd shrink it down to fit inside the viewport of their mobile device. So every device has its sort of default size. So you might be on a phone like an iPhone that has a width of 360 pixels, but what they're going to do is they're actually going to the version, they're telling the browser that it's 960, and it's going to take the version of your site as if it was at 960 pixels wide, and it's going to shrink the whole thing down, and it's going to be super zoomed out. It's going to look like your desktop site, but really, really small, even if you did all the hard work of building your media queries and doing everything you wanted to make it responsive. So to prevent it from doing this on our pages, which we've optimized for small screens with their media queries, we need to add a meta tag to the head of our document. There are a lot of different attributes, but the basic meta tag that you'll use will look something like this, or will look exactly like this really. And this can be added anywhere in the head of our document. This will make sure that the page actually loads properly on mobile devices, which after all the hard work we did, we really wanted to do. So once you've graduated from here on Scrimba and you're working on your own pages and you're testing them in different devices, remember to include this in your head. I can go anywhere up here. I already have a meta tag for that. I'm going to go right after that and paste it in right there. So what this is doing is it's saying that it's a meta tag is always referencing different things. We haven't really looked at meta tags, but it's referencing like different stuff. You can have a description of the site, you can have the author of the site. So you can say meta name equals author, content is equal to Kevin Powell. For this individual page of my website, I've said that the author of this page was Kevin Powell, and now the browser knows that. There are other ones that you may use along the way as well. But in this case, we're looking at the viewport one. So we're saying that this meta tag is related to our viewport. And the first one here is the really important one. What this is doing is it's saying the width is actually the device width. So this is where I said that mobile devices would simulate being a larger device and then shrink everything down. So it would say, I'm actually a device that's 960 pixels, and then it would take that and shrink everything down. This is saying, nope, the width isn't what you're telling me it is, it's the actual device width. And the initial scale, I don't think really need it, but it's pretty standard to have it in there. And it's just setting the initial zoom level when the page is first loaded. So you could actually have it zoomed in more or less. but I think that'd be really, really awkward. So you generally want it just to be zoomed to 100% or like the default 1.0 type of thing, to have it not scaled when the page is loaded. So once you're done here on Scrimba and you're making your own web pages, please remember always to be including this in here, because the browser window on your computer is not the same as on your phone or on your tablet. So you want to test across different devices, and most importantly, if you don't want things to look really zoomed out, make sure
Okay.
the page that you create has this meta tag right here. You did it. You should be super proud of yourself. Before we get into being proud of yourself and giving you a pat on the back, let's try and remember citing a page to it. We've learned enough to leverage it and to do some stuff with it. And we've done that by starting to play with justify content and align items to position things where we want them to be on the page. So we know we can, on both of these, do a flex start, flex, and leftover. So it's taking that justify content and align items and making them work the other way around a little bit, which is kind of weird. I agree. But that's such as media queries in the navigation. It's a lot more complicated. So please take a break for everything. You have the Adobe X, what we've done so far, to do any work module, whatever it is you like to do for a little bit, just to let everything absorb.
Boom! Finish!
You see how we can step up our style.
Sue! Guys, we will take a break. Let me make more coffee.
So we've learned how to start thinking responsibly. So now it's time to test those skills out with these challenges that I've put together for you. Now, as I've said with all the other challenges up until now, it is important to actually write the code. Don't just say, oh, I know how to do that. I remember how to do that from that other lesson. I really want to make sure you actually write the code and try it out and make sure you can do it without watching my solution. Like most of the challenges we've already looked at, they build on top of each other to get us to a final layout, but as usual, they also stand on their own as well. In this case, we're going to be continuing where we left off from in the CSS fundamentals challenges, but again, they all stand on their own. If you didn't finish those, you didn't do them. It's fine. If you did them a while ago and you completely forgot about it, do not worry about it. We're starting from a fresh slate. I'm providing everything you need for every single one of the challenges. So let's go ahead and do this. It should be a lot of fun.
Right, we will take a break here. I will come back at around. It's hard to talk when I wear this plastic thingy, plastic brace. So I will see you guys in 2 hours, 3 hours. See you guys at night.